When we're moving on to mystery number 2, thought form on the pattern of a mystery, we will go towards that which we seek to know. There was an interesting question near the first of that, beginning of that chapter. If we had wings but to carry our thoughts into the spheres of the beloved, from whence would they come and to where would they go? That is an interesting question. What are your thoughts?
Well, this again goes back to the understanding of compatibilities. During the rites of passage, the soul is being cultivated to think much deeper on the questions of what direction are they actually pointing towards. Many people can say, oh, I'm very spiritual, or I'm very, very devout this or devout that. But the question is, what are you actually seeking? Because what you are seeking in your life will tell us where you are going. Like, for instance, I'm just going to use a random example. If you believe in your heart of hearts, I am seeking God, I love God, and I'm doing this, but everything you do is seeking after wealth, then you are actually going towards the worldly attainment of wealth, which is a worldly wealth, not the heavenly wealth. So you have to examine, and you will, in this second mystery, what direction are you actually going? And this can be determined by that which you honestly are seeking. If you are, and here's an example too, where you can be going in diametrically opposed positions from what you believe simply by not identifying that which you seek to know. So let's just take, very typical thing, since we've talked about many times how lust is a real common primary vice that people struggle with. So if someone believes that they're seeking love, but what they are actually doing is engaging in a lot of lustful relationships or something, there is a fundamental disparagement between what they're actually seeking to do and know versus what they believe they are seeking and what they would truly be seeking. You're truly seeking to understand love. You're seeking God. Because God is love. He's the source of all love and being. So you would be seeking God in order to understand love. If you are seeking lustful relationships, you're actually going towards something in the other direction. It's going to be a destructive sexuality, which will have nothing to do with love. So there's an identification process going on during this second mystery. Like, for instance, it says here, the human way is far inferior to that which we see, which is what I'm speaking of. We have to do deep examination of, okay, so what am I actually seeking to know then? What am I putting my time, energy, wealth, and effort into in this life? Because that will tell you what you are going towards.
Now, thought form on the pattern of a mystery is sometimes called temples in the sky, and also mysterious windows of perception into the infinite unknown. So it seems to me that's why would they also call it temples in the sky? I get the mysterious windows of perception into the infinite unknown because it's like, whoa, it's like it's infinite, it's unknown. There's mysterious perceptive windows, but temples in the sky.
Like, well, here, within them lies energetic knowledge of places yet unseen and wisdom only implied. Their words come in the form of an essence, a certain knowledge of concepts above our previous human comprehension. But these concepts are so vast and delightful to our senses, we cannot help but grasp forwards towards them in our hunger and thirst for the greater knowledge of creation. The temples in the sky is actually an event, a period of time during the rites of passage when the temples will begin to appear in the sky to the initiated, which means that either in the mystical and sometimes even in the physical as well, these great doors and windows of perception are being opened. So the temples are now visible. They have become visible because the vibration has reached a height capable of seeing what was already there, but you could not see it there before.
There's another thing that interested me that I wrote down.
Okay.
Because we have, that last thing that I said, because we're trying to seek, we're going towards that which we seek to know. But if we're limited by, the infinite, I mean, we're by the, not seeing everything as infinite. And by, here's something that you wrote, we have known our own thoughts, elsewise we would not have traveled this road. Our own thoughts have been filled with vice, false enumerations, and renderings of false truths that have led us astray into the temple of self-worship and ill-gotten licentiousness. For we know these thought forms appearing before us in the sky are not self. Generated, they have come to us from a higher world where thoughts are only generated on patterns of mystery and are never corrupted by human wanderings. Within them lies energetic knowledge of places yet unseen and wisdom only implied. Because I think that most of us come from the place of what we know on a human level. We're very confined to our own experiences, our own feelings, what our opinions are, what our beliefs are. So in this, if we're going towards that which we seek to know, and there's this giant mystery of possibility and infinite knowingness, like way beyond what we can ever imagine. This is a real turn on for me.
Yeah.
It's really like, whoa, what is this stuff? I want to know that. But then there's like because I'm an Aquarius, right? And
Okay.
I'm super. My sun, my moon, my Mercury, my rising. So I'm what's known as a quadruple. So Aquarius is to know, right? That's their main phrase. Just like you are, I am. Pisces is I believe, etc., etc. So that's like a little phrase. But one can know something like I know that. With their left brain or with their whole brain, their whole being, their compassion. So to know something, it's a whole complete energetic transformation, really.
Right.
Wouldn't you say?
Yes. And, the key element here is that when you say we have known our own thoughts, elsewise we would not have traveled this road, it's not speaking about knowing our own thoughts in the way that you're speaking of it. It's more knowing our own thoughts in the light of God's wisdom, which will be shown down upon us. And then we will truly understand the real thrust of what our thoughts are, what they mean, where they come from. And that's important. The other part, too, that's important, that it's in bold in the book, where it says, they have come to us from a higher world where thoughts are only generated on patterns of mystery and are never, it's in bold, are never corrupted by human wanderings. This means that we are entering into these deeper realms of timelessness where the defilement of the karmic human sinful elements do not abide there. They are never corrupted by human wanderings. And that is important. So when I'm speaking of having known your own thoughts, it's knowing your own thoughts from the light of God, which has been shown down upon you and has literally translated to you the real truth of your own thoughts. And that's a very different thing from knowing what you think, what you feel, what you know, all these things, because all of these things, we know them, but only in part. In the mysteries, the rites of passage, and the second mystery, you are not going to be traveling into these castles and temples in the sky. You're not moving into the thought forms on the pattern of a mystery if you have not known your own thoughts. And that means known them in the light of God's thinking, which means the truth of your own thoughts and your own thoughts, your own views, all these things. So it's a very different knowing that we speak of when we're talking about the rites of passage. Much higher knowing. It's bestowed upon us through these gradations of light that are brought down to us through
Now,
God.
I'd like to, in the next rites of passage, it's temples in the sky. That which exists in time is completely altered by the existence of timelessness.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So we're going right there. Yes, and this is
And I wonder if you can explain this coming from the first mystery into the second mystery into the timelessness of the soul. So just so
well,
you can see the
I'm
journey.
gonna do the best I can, but you know, I'm gonna remain on the, you know, words don't always convey what needs to be conveyed here. So we're gonna do the best we can. But yes, that which exists in time is completely altered by the existence of timelessness. This is a silent knowledge that we attain when we enter into those realms of timelessness, which is where these rites will now continue to play out. Timelessness contains within it all of the knowledge of the above, the below, the understanding that God's truth brings to us of all the elements that are within time, of events, lifetimes, etc. However, timelessness is much more than this. And when you're entering into timelessness, you're entering into a space that is above the realm of duality. And so the essence of this place is entirely unique. It's totally different than what we experience here. It's almost a transcendental type place where you are seeing all things from a higher elemental expression of itself. And by so doing, everything that you see that does remain existent in the world of time is completely inexorably altered. Your understanding of what all of it is, what it means, what it's there for, why it's there, is completely altered by this existence of timelessness. When you go into these transcendental spheres that are above duality, you are seeing things from above. You know, you are seeing things from this heightened space of how reality looks from the eyes of God. It's not quite the eyes of God yet, because you're not there, but you're seeing more and more how We are in existence in almost like these little pots, portals. It's like ant hills. You know, we're all in a big ant hill. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We see this overlapping understanding of events, time frames, realities, karma, sinfulness, um, humanity, our own humanity, from a very different sphere of knowledge, and it alters everything. And again, this is a silent wisdom that is imparted to us through particles. That's why it's completely altered.
There's a few things I want to touch upon
Okay.
in this chapter. Sometimes I may take something from your book and I might not say who wrote it, but in my notes,
That's okay.
I've tried to write it down a lot more in these books.
Yeah.
I'm getting better, but the soul
That's all
enters,
right.
the soul enters into immortality, realizing that all that has been is now and ever shall be, has always been so, and is reachable within the mystical spheres as a transient call from the spacious realm of absolute nothing. The soul realizes timelessness.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to, here's another thought. The guardian of the realm, as the soul emerges upon a vast and delightful array of monuments hovering in the air above them. Perchance, if the initiate knows the right answer, they will be given passage.
Passage.
Per-
Yes.
perhaps. If,
Perhaps.
if they know
Yes,
the
and you
right.
know, in these ritual passages, you are being given opportunities for unconscious or subconscious knowledge to rise up within you. And a lot of times what the passages are is whether or not your soul can suddenly tap into this knowledge that it has within itself. It's not a conscious knowledge. It's nothing that you would be able to do in your physical waking body. It's something that you would only be able to do if the Holy Spirit infuses it and brings it forth from you. And that is often what the trial is. One of the uh, ways that you prove that you're ready to enter into that next gate, that next passage of knowledge. And so, yes, that is exactly what it's referring to, is the bringing forth. When and people talk to me about this all the time, like, you're right. It was like all of a sudden the knowledge was just there and I just started spewing it out. And I think, yes, that's how it happens. That's the rites of passage. That's when you are pulling from the deep well of your soul wisdom and knowledge that you could never understand or know in a conscious waking state. But you're able to do so in the out-of-body travel state as you are progressing and um, bringing up that vibration continually, so that the conscious element of your soul becomes more and more connected to all these other aspects of your soul that contain these things that you would not know just in this singular vessel. You wouldn't know that.
Now, one of the things, and I don't know if this is true with a lot of the other houses of the mysteries, or the mansions, but the smell of incense is strong in these realms. Roses and other celestial scents.
Yes, the fragrance.
Every dewdrop, every mystical breath, every container which flows through it. There is not a pore in the body that doesn't take in the fragrance.
That's right.
That sounds pretty great.
It is. It's awesome. It's awe-inspiring, and there is a change in demeanor that you have just by being in its presence, in the presence of this holiness.
You know what's interesting too, is my wife makes elixirs and she uses essences like flower essences and stuff. And she said the highest vibration of all is the rose. Rose is the highest.
Really?
Yeah. So when she's making an elixir or something, if she ever uses rose, then it's some kind of higher vibrational thing that she's working with.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
know that about flower essentials there. But yes, that's probably something that was, known to the ancients as well. And then part of the reason that the rose has been um, part of the symbols of the mysteries and the rites of passage from now to throughout time. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Now, the next mystery is the ignition of the eternal and ancient flame and the breath of life.
Yes. And, so again, the eternal flame is this process wherein the soul is engaged in bringing forth and then uniting both the masculine and feminine aspects of their energy and their soul. And the ancient flame is something that you will ignite in a very literal way. And that has to do with when you are passing through now and you are accepting the torch, so to speak, of the ancient knowledge coming forth within you. The breath of life is you'll have to just bear with me because as we go through these, I just kind of
Well,
go
you
there.
you
You
said
know?
you said here
But the
that
breath of life is well, I'm imagining it in my head. It's when
sure.
we receive this breath. It's a life breath, so that all that we say and do with in alignment with our mission for God becomes enlivened, becomes the breath of life for others. It becomes um, milk for the soul. And so these are things we actually receive in these rites of passage as well. But go ahead. Go ahead. What?
Well, you said it's made through the energized breath of God's life, beyond
Yes, it
explanation.
is.
And then your initiations began with 7 fire pits. So I wonder if you
Yes.
can talk a little bit about that.
Well, the 7 fire pits, and again, keeping in mind, the 7, the 8, and then there's also the 12. And these are, big master numbers in the mysteries and in numerology because of the mysteries. But the 7 has to do with um, completion. 8 is the immortal. 12 is this sacred number that applies with the apostles, the 12 tribes of Israel. Um, there's 12 lots of things, you know what I mean? And that's part of what it is. But the 7 fire pits, you experience this where they are being ignited around, and the ignition comes from within your soul, but the final pit is only ignited by the hand of God itself. And it's like this big pause in the whole process. And you remember these 7 pits are also in alignment with your chakras. So you're igniting, igniting, igniting. The 7th pit is going to be in relation to the crown chakra. The 7th one, only God, and it comes from heaven. And you have to wait for it because this is something that God chooses, not us as individuals. We have to then be worthy to receive it. And so, it says right here, it says, earlier he had spoken, ignite the ancient flame, he had shouted. But as the soul struggles with that which remains of earth, he will only nod no. So what we are being shown then is it is our willingness to let go of our worldly ideas, our worldly ways, which then determines when God will send that flame to ignite that entire fire, that complete pattern of 7. Elsewise, he will remain silent. And again, this is so because the initiations into the mysteries and the rites of passage are entries from mortal being and understanding into that which is eternal. So in a sense, there's no more time to bring small aspects of heaven to earth. There's no more time for that. Entering into the rites requires a leap in consciousness that will encompass heaven and earth. And so we are now moving through these ignitions so that a higher transcendency can be achieved, where we are always then moving further and further away from the ground. You know, in the mystical, we talk about, oh, well, that person is speaking from the ground. What that means in mystical language is that they're completely a karmic being and they do not have any spiritual influx. So they are operating from the ground. They are a worldly being. When you are moving through the rites of passage, you are letting all of those things go, like dross, because it is dross in the path.
So I have something to read here.
Sure.
Encompasses and requires within the energetic structure of a human person attempting to rise above the gates of the human being into the status of incorporeal luminosity of being, it bears itself in small steps. Transcending may indeed be reached, but there is a mysteriously linear road which must be taken to attain it. For it is not a destination, but a transmutation.
Exactly. And what's happening when a soul is receiving this breath is a transmutation. It's you are taking within your body life itself, the breath of life. You know, here, one of the texts I included was from the Tao Te Ching, from the translation from Frederick Henry Balfour. The breath or spirit of the deep is imperishable. The passage through which these two influences emerge and enter is called the root of visible creation. They are ceaseless in action as though permanent, and may be used without ever being exhausted. Why are those words so important? They are important because when we are igniting the eternal flame, when we are igniting the ancient flame, when we are receiving the breath of life, we are receiving that which is immortal, that which is eternal. Remember, what we are as a human being is mortal, it is temporary, it is extremely limited. And that's what he's talking about. When I went through the ritual passages in receiving the living water, it never empties. Why is that? Because that which is of God is never exhausted. But if we retain and we wish to remain only on the ground and operate on the ground, we are then continual to be a mortal being, which will cease to exist and will run out of energy, run out of steam. That which comes from God is something which can never be exhausted. It is always in movement. It is eternal. It means it's forever. What mortal means is that it's temporary. It's not real in the infinitely existent way.
And so this is
When we
really about going from the mortal, the
to
temporary,
the
to the eternal. to the immortal.
Yes,
So I have this
exactly.
right here. As the soul realizes at this moment that the earthly ways must now be combined with that which is of heaven, he will allow himself to go inward to receive the thrust.
Exactly. Exactly. And by silent contemplation, this will become clear. You know, these are things that we receive only in the silence. And you know, when it speaks of inhaling the fragrances, we're doing the same thing. We're inhaling eternal life. We are inhaling the energy of life itself. When we are inhaling the fragrances of mortality or death, dying, decomposition, we're inhaling that. So literally, when you see in all the mysteries throughout time, from all religions, tribal religions utilize this symbol very much as well. The mortal being is shown as the being, like let's take the story of White Buffalo Calf Woman. Are you familiar with that story?
Yes.
Okay, so for those who may have not heard it, basically the story of White Buffalo Calf Woman is the story of how the sacred pipe was brought to the Lakota people. And White Buffalo Calf Woman was almost like a holy mother type character to the native peoples. She was a holy woman who came from heaven to the people. And two young braves come up to her, and one of them views her only through the eyes of lust because she is this beautiful, holy creature. The other is able to see her and honor and revere that she is a holy being. So the one who views her only through the eyes of lust, he decomposes rapidly until his flesh turns to bone, and then his bones turn to dust. Whereas the other brave, who sees that she is a holy messenger of God, brings the pipe to the people. So what's in that image? The improper translation of that which is holy into that which is temporal and unreal and of the below, the vice of lust, caused death, decay, and decomposition. That's the energy that it is. Recognizing that which is holy and receiving it with honor gives life. So this is what we're talking about. People who live on the ground are living on mortal elements. When you are going through this passage, you are now beginning to take within you the immortal elements that will transform your soul from a temporary personality, just a little human creature that will go from dust to dust, to a soul that will be imbued with life and immortality. You're taking in the life of God Himself. And that's what we're talking about there. Again, the ignition of the ancient and eternal flame and the energized breath of God's life.
And you know, on that token, because the ignition of the eternal and ancient flame and the breath of life is made through the energized breath of God's life. Now, I'm a Kundalini teacher. I haven't taught for many years, but I used to teach a lot of master classes, and you know, I taught like a long series on pranayama and breath. But this seems to me it's kind of like the opposite, because in Kundalini there's techniques to create something, where this is more about embodying something so that something
Yes.
happens through God. So here I want to read this right.
Remember, you are what you emanate. So, remember the mysteries build upon themselves. So, yes, it's not something that you do, it's something that you are.
And so, because I agree, I get that. It can only ignite the ancient flame with the breath of life. 7 fire pits, the initiate appeals to his own inner chakra grid. The 7 seals, which guard the spiritual man. The 7 levels of heaven, represented in the energy body. The system of energy within his own soul, which must be ignited in order for the journey into the mysteries to concur. And he breathes beginning from the bottom. And each flame lights with ease until he reaches the top point. So, I mean, in the work that I've done with the chakras and the breath, starting from the bottom chakra and working your way up, and it's fully a technique, and it doesn't even need to have anything. Although my approach was always super spiritual, I guess you can call it that. I mean, I don't know. I was devoted or something. I just, wanted to be connected to God, and so for this, to me, what this means is that, when we are there and ready and worthy and prepared, desirous of going to the next state, then this will happen more to us. And this is just more of a roadmap of, hey, this is what's happening to you right now, as opposed to like, oh, I'm going to do a technique like this and get all the chakras balanced, and and here's the technique,
Yeah.
and it's 40,000 years old, and that's cool. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not taking away from Kundalini and its practices. I think it's amazing, but it's kind of the opposite. It's not a technique. It's a
Right.
becoming. It's an emanation.
The becoming.
Yeah.
Absolutely, an emanation. That's exactly.
There's something else here. When the sense of sight is forgotten, the light becomes infinitely copious. When the sense of hearing is annihilated, the heart becomes concentrated upon the eternal depths. If both of these organs of perception be forgotten, the man will be able to shut himself off from the allurements of the world, pure, guileless, and complete, in perfect unison with the universe, vast, limitless, like a vivifying aura, subject to no distinctions of mankind. The greatness of heaven and earth is that which I am linked. The multitude of created things is what I direct or grasp. That's from the Chi Wing Tun, the Taoist text translated by Friedrich Henry Ballflower, 1884.
Yes.
See, I'm getting better at that.
Good, Brian. Yes.
Mm.
And absolutely. I mean, he said it well, didn't he?
He did, but I just wanted to, shutting off the sight and the sound, because we're going to get into light and sound a little bit later with the mysteries.
Exactly.
So
when you shut off the externals in this world, you are then slowly illuminating and turning on the senses in the other world. And so, he says, when the sense of sight is forgotten, the light becomes infinitely copious. He's the whole description that he's giving is this entry into the transcendental space, which is above duality. It alters everything. And again, we're going back to everything that we're building upon. So we are building upon these other mysteries, which is we are what we emanate. And so we are understanding this. We'll go towards that which we seek to know, but also that which is in time is completely altered by the existence of timelessness. And that is all reflected in these words. So when we turn off the sense of sight and sound, we are anchoring our spirit into a different way of perceiving God that is profound and quite different. But we are also opening the way to a higher seeing and a higher hearing, a higher sense of being. But we are experiencing this from a transcendental realm where timelessness and our experience of timelessness has altered everything that we already believed we knew. Everything we thought we knew is completely altered now because we sit within this transcendental above duality, and everything has changed.
You know, in yogic concepts, there's something called the 10 yogic bodies. And so it starts with the soul coming in to into a body, into an incarnation, and with total forgetfulness. And so it starts with the three minds. And the first mind is the negative mind. And this is where the duality begins. So it's like, I'm not that. I'm definitely not that. I don't want to be that. That looks terrible. And then it's the positive mind where the soul starts to identify with things that, you know, it likes. Like, oh yeah, I kind of like that. I'm like that. I want to be. Oh yeah, I want to. That's totally what I want to be. You know. But then there's that duality that's created, and the fourth body, the fourth yogic body, is the neutral mind or the meditative mind, and that's where it rises above duality. So it can see the negative leanings and thrusts and the positive ones, but it is not identified with either. It transcends, it can see either, it can go to either one, but it can just also just be in this neutral meditative space. And that's what that
Well,
remote.
and you know, just another quick quote from the Chi Wen Tung, which really sums up what I've been talking about, the difference between a person on the ground and a person now choosing to live within the eternal. The reason that the vulgar are unable to attain to prolonged existence is that they lose their hold of the invisible and suffer the incorporeal to escape them. You know, there's a lot of things in the rites of passage which require silent reflection, you know.